So, good afternoon to everybody. I have the pleasure to welcome you for this press meeting about terrorism in Nigeria. Boko Haram succeeded by rising Fulani militancy with distinguished guests coming from Nigeria. And I think it's a pleasure, if I can say like that, because the subject is not so pleasant, but it's with pleasure that we welcome you here for this press meeting, because I think it's an important subject, even if Africa and Africa terrorism is not so popular among European media. I think it's important to insist about the issues concerning this topic. So thanks again for being there, and we will hear you with great interest. Before to give the floor to Mrs. MIRJAM Boss, who is the lawyer working with Jubilee Campaign, human rights organization, I would ask you to she will introduce our speakers, but I will ask to everybody of you to sign our golden book. Just a signature here. You can. Please, Mr. You can. Yeah. Okay, and yeah. And just to give you a little souvenir, that's the Cartooning for Peace cartoons. We have exhibition there. That's something, and it's also about terrorism and other topics. So just a souvenir for you. That's in French, but cartoons are readable in every language. Yes. Yeah. So Mrs. Boss, I give you the floor. Yes, just push the button.
Yes.
Yeah. Please.
So thank you for hosting us and for these lovely gifts. I represent Jubilee Campaign, which is a human rights organization conducting advocacy for religious freedom. On my left, I have Mr. Mark LIPDO, who's representing Stephanus Foundation. His organization is based in Nigeria and also conducts advocacy regarding religious freedom, as well as gives legal and humanitarian aid to victims of atrocities and human rights violations. On my right, I have Mr. Mark Jacob, who's a lawyer and representing people that have been victimized by the Fulani militant conflict. And then on my far right is Mr. Solomon MUSA, who is the national president of the Southern Kaduna People's Union, and who has also been conducting advocacy regarding the atrocities that are happening right now in Nigeria. And then on the far right is Ms. Fatima Njogu, who is also a lawyer for Stephanus Foundation in Nigeria. And I will give the word to Ms. Fatima.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Push the button, please.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Since introductions have been made, I'll just go straight to introduce. Well, briefly, talking about Nigeria. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa, is the 12th largest producer of crude oil in the world, and Nigerians are generally very religious people who are either Muslims or Christians, with a few animists among them. Nigeria is a very heterogeneous country. It has over 800 tribal groups. And looking at Nigeria as a whole, you could divide it roughly into a very troubled north and a fairly comfortable south. This is because the south have more homogeneous tribes compared to the middle belt, the north. Where you come to northern Nigeria, that's where you have over 500 tribes. Just in northern Nigeria alone. And most of these northern tribes, they are minority people who are largely Christians in a region that is largely Muslim. So there are bound to be a lot of conflicts. Nigeria is governed by a constitution. We refer to it as the 99 Constitution. the Constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999. Every human being, every authority, every person in Nigeria, is subject to the Constitution because it's the fundamental law. Now, a few sections that I want to talk about. We have Section 10 of the Constitution of Nigeria that declares Nigeria as a secular state. In other words, Nigeria cannot be declared as a Christian nation, neither can it be declared as a Muslim nation. Then the Constitution also guarantees freedom of religion. In other words, you could choose to be a Muslim, you could choose to be a Christian, you could choose to be an animist, and you can decide not to even have a religion if you want. Also, the Constitution guarantees freedom from discrimination. So that means whether you are born, under any kind of circumstance, regardless of your faith, regardless of what you believe, you are actually guaranteed freedom to be discriminated against due to those things. Nigeria also guarantees the right to life. Nobody can take anybody's life except, a court of competent jurisdiction declares someone, guilty of any offense that the penalty is death by sentencing the person to death. And finally, on the Constitution, I also want to say that the primary and the responsibility of government is the security and welfare of the people. That's what the Constitution declares, that the people's security and welfare is its primary responsibility. However, we found out that there are a few things that are happening in Nigeria that are basic foundations for impunity. A lot of things are going on in Nigeria that the government is allowing to happen. And then when it goes unpunished, it becomes like a foundation for impunity where people continue to do, flout the law. For example, Nigeria's constitution allows for Sharia law. Sharia law is Islamic law. It guides the Muslims in all that they do. But the constitution, in fairness to the Muslims, recognizes the laws concerning their marriage, inheritance, succession, and things like that. Simply that, and it only guides Muslims. However, 12 northern states in Nigeria have decided to adopt the criminal aspects of Sharia, and then they have made them like state laws, contrary to the Section 10 of the Constitution that makes Nigeria secular. In other words, they have decided to bring in capital punishments like death by stoning, flogging, amputations, and those kinds of things. Then in addition to that, we have a lot of situations where people in different communities are just attacked sporadically like that. Many times, you find that many times the minority people are just attacked just like that, without provocation, without any, they're just in their houses, and the next thing you know, somebody comes and just attacks people, and it continues like that. Okay, so I want to say that most of the minority people in Nigeria have suffered a lot of oppression, they've suffered a lot of marginalization. Like in Bauchi State, for example, we have the Bogoro local government and the Tafa Balewa local government, which have fairly a large number of Christians, but you find that the chairmen in those communities are never elected by the people, rather they are appointed by the government, and most times they are Muslims. So you find that these people are not able to speak for themselves during federal events and things like that. The people who speak for them are not people from there. So these are some of the examples. Then we have the issue of a lot of abductions of girls, particularly girls between 9 to 14 years old. There was a particular instance last year that we pursued for a very long time, having to do with a girl called Habiba Ishaku. She was just at home. The last thing her parents knew was that they left her at home. They came back home, they didn't find her. After much search and all, it was discovered that a neighbor, someone in the community picked her up, and then, converted her to Islam, or they said she willingly converted to Islam and married her off without her father's consent. And we did all the advocacy efforts we did to help rescue that girl. Up till today is futile, because even the Inspector General of Police, we wrote him a letter concerning this matter. He did not respond. Many authorities are aware of this situation, but nobody is doing anything to get that girl out of the house. So in other words, that girl now can no longer go to school. She's now having the responsibility of an adult, even as she turned 15 in October last year. So she will probably become a mother and, begin to grapple with the responsibilities of adulthood. And this happens to many girls, in that region. Many times when these girls are abducted, they are taken to the Sharia courts, and they insist that these girls have converted to Islam. So these are some of the things, that people are, grappling with in northern Nigeria.
Yeah. Sorry. If I'll pick it up from there to give you an overview of ethnic spread in Nigeria. Nigeria is made up of over 800 ethnic nationalities, ethnic peoples group. In northern part of the country alone, our research has shown that we have over 673 tribes in northern Nigeria alone. And that is within 19 states that are based in northern Nigeria. Those tribes are indigenous to those locations, and they know their boundaries, they know their location, geographical locations, and all that. And they are ethnic to that. They have heritage to their ethnic lands and properties. What we see is another tribe that comes, is a nomadic tribe, which is Fulani. Fulani are known to be over 30 million in number, and they are spread all over 22 countries of Africa. Now, the Fulanis move from one part of the country, of the continent, to the other. And seasonally, they come into Nigeria. And they run their activity of cattle rearing from the northern part of the country down to the south, depending on when the grasses are drying from the upper desert area down to the lower part. Now, the Fulani are over 90% Muslims, and the few of them that are not Muslims, we see that most of the times they are even marginalized, and they are maltreated even by the majority religious group. We discover that even though the Fulani are not generally violent in nature, but recently we discover that some of them have become militarized, and they create a kind of violent militia that are known to be perpetrating crime within communities of these ethnic people that are spread all over northern Nigeria. We also found out that the terrorism 2015 terrorism index have targeted this group, and they have concluded that they are the 4th deadliest terrorist group in the world. These are the group that we're living with. In fact, in our reporting, our record shows that over 4,000 people have been, Fulani have been responsible for the death of over 4,000 people from 2014 alone. And so these are the kind of groups that go around perpetrating crime among the ethnic nationalities who are majority a farming community, and because they depend on the activity of crop farming, they live in isolated communities, spread away from each other. And whenever there is security risk, such as the kind of attack that is happening, it is always very difficult for them to come together and help to secure the environment. They rely strongly on the outcome and the earnings from their cropping, the farming activities, where they farm and raise some crops and sell them for food. Sometimes they feed on it all through the years. But we discover that at the time when these crops are growing at their prime time, Fulani come in with their cattle and they graze freely over these farmlands. And whenever the situation is reported to the government, there have never been any arrest, there have never been any prosecution, and so gradually this activity of grazing on farmlands have become, have continued to be perpetrated with impunity. You discover that victims of all this crime are always non-Muslims, wherein attacks are carried out whenever we go in there to interview people. Mostly, primarily, the victims are Christians. And because of the divide that we see and because of the international religious situation in the world today, we find out this matter has been aggravated with time. Most victims today have voiced that they are targeted primarily because they are not Muslims. In fact, in most times, most of the victims say they are targeted because they are Christians, and they have found it continuously impossible to continue to practice their faith within the region. From 2015 to 2016 alone, attacks that are carried out from our records spread within the states ranging from Kaduna State to Plateau State, Benue State, Adamawa State, and sometimes it has spread even to the southern part of the country. Such kind of terrorist activity have also been identified with areas like Enugu, Ekiti, and Delta, which are primarily in the southern part of Nigeria. Today, most communities that have been burnt and people killed within them, there have never been any compensation done by the government, and so the people are suffering. They have nowhere to sleep, they have no food because their farmlands have been burnt, and they have been denied any farming activity. So virtually you discover that the Fulani community have gone into those areas and are building their houses. Today, there are communities within Plateau, Benue, and southern Kaduna that have been occupied by these Fulani tribes. So we see a gradual ethnic cleansing and a taking over of farmlands and a kind of a religious cleansing as well. So this is why we are concerned as an organization.
Thank you. To build up on what my colleagues have said, one of our basic worries is that in Nigeria we have a constituted authority, we have a government that is democratically elected and that is supposed to live by the Constitution. Unfortunately, in the face of all these atrocities that my colleagues have mentioned, the response of government, both at the federal and the state level, has been very terrible. We see a situation where authority comes in to give narrative that is very biased and very unfounded. First of all, the governor of Kaduna State, for instance, his name is Malam Nasir El-Rufai, he comes out to say that the attackers are foreign terrorists. After a while, he comes out again and says that the attackers are people who were affected by the presidential elections of Nigeria in 2011. We are in 2017. And he comes out to say that the attackers are coming back because they were affected in 2011 to kill people. Thirdly, he comes out to say that the attackers are just mere people who want to graze cattle and they are being denied land. So they are just angry, so they come out and attack people. And that is government. That is the narrative that comes from government, and that is what worries us. As victims, we expected very little, very much from the government. I mean, we expect that government will be interested in stopping the killing, not passing the buck. Today, it is the victim that is being accused. It is the victim that is being arrested. We have situations that you will hear where people who even just talk about it are arrested. I have represented people in court who have voiced out issues on this, and they are in court today. They have been arrested. Now, the vulnerability of our people in this environment is very pathetic. They live within the hinterland. They live within the villages and the farmlands because that is their profession. They live off the farm. And they are attacked even when there is a large contingent of security personnel not too far away. On 24th of December last year, a village named Goska was attacked. There were a large contingent of soldiers and police, not more than 5 kilometers away. With all the cries, with all the fire and everything going on, there was no response from the security agencies. Most of the time when the victims cry out, they are not responded to. And we have seen this happen from village to village. We have counted over 20 villages that have been attacked just between the space of 6 months. And the pattern is the same. And we keep complaining. Government appears to be uninterested in whatever we are saying. And that is why one of the reasons we are here to ask for intervention. The entire community is a systematic way of wiping them off. From village to village, day and night, the attackers are now so bold, they come out sometimes in the daytime, surround the village, and set fire to the houses. When people run out, they are shot at. And when those who are captured are slaughtered. We have pictures that we can show you of such atrocities. People are slaughtered like rams when they are running from the attackers. And they do this, and there is no response from government. A lot has happened, and when we try to speak out, people even accuse us of exaggerating. But these are realities. Like I said, some of us, I was born in these communities. I grew up there. I still have my family there. I have buried cousins. I have buried nephews that have been victims of this situation. So we are speaking as victims, not as people who are living somewhere else. We live here in those places, and we have participated in largely the funerals involving our relations that are victims. We are really just sad that in the face of the reality, government prefers to push a different narrative about the problem. Instead of going into the bushes, the attackers are known to be sitting somewhere in the bush. They have their camps. They come out when they want. They target a village and attack it. The security forces of Nigeria, over the years, have refused to go into those camps and confront the attackers. And these camps are well known. I will leave it here so that my friend can take over.
On 24th of June 2014, one man by name ASP Osman Gambo Kobin from Kobin village in Numana, chiefdom of Sanga local government, came through, had severe trauma because of what he experienced. What he experienced was very, very traumatic. On that day, he lost 9 members of his family. He lost his father, Madaki, aged 104 years, his elder brother, Paul, aged 70, his wife, Salamatu Gambo, aged 56 years, 2 of his brother's wives, his young son, his elder brother. Also killed were the wives of his elder brother's 2 sons, as well as elder brother's granddaughter, who was 8 months old. Now, several families have completely been displaced. They are scattered all over the place. Several families now are living in different places, so family life has ended for them. They are living They are not living in camps. They are not living in one place. They are living, some of them, completely destitute under the vagaries of the weather. This is a reality that our families are facing now. They've lost their homes, they've lost their sources of livelihood, they've lost their farmlands because their farmlands have been grazed upon. We live basically as an agrarian community. They've lost everything. The dignity of a human person is gone completely. There are a lot of instances and instances. Recently, just about 3 weeks ago, a young mother just gave birth to a baby in Kaura local government, and the attackers came. She was burnt to death. The father was shot to death, and only the little infant remained. These are some of the realities that we're facing. Now, what have been our expectations? The expectations of the victims are that the state should protect the victims. But that's not the reality. What we are facing, my brother has mentioned, is a situation where there is great discrimination in Nigeria. I give you an instance. When the present administration of Governor El-Rufai came to power in 2015, the greatest menace that was faced was that of cattle rustling, that cows were being stolen. And of course, the Fulanis are pastoralists. El-Rufai himself is a Fulani man. El-Rufai, the governor, synergized with 4 state governors, and they ensured that cattle rustling menace was brought to an end because there was firepower from air, there was firepower from ground, and that the cattle rustlers were completely routed. But when it was the turn of Southern Kaduna, we cried out. We said exactly what you did in Birnin Gwari with regards to cattle rustling. Human lives are now involved. Can you come and do the same? They refused to do that. Now, this kept repeating itself again and again and again. And when the victims who want to protect themselves were denied the right to protection by the state, we are also denied the right to protect ourselves. Not to attack anyone, but to protect ourselves. We are denied that right. So there is also the issue of welfare. The victims expect some kind of welfare from the state. As I speak with you, there is no single IDP camp, internally displaced persons camp, in the whole of Southern Kaduna, whereas in the northeast, that is composed of Hausa Fulanis, each time Boko Haram attacked, right now there are IDP camps there, none in Southern Kaduna. Medical care were denied. In December, when there was a severe attack on Goska community, 24 hours curfew was imposed even before that time. And the only hospital, Kafanchan General Hospital, was also placed under lock and key. And I'm sure under war situation, even under war situation, hospitals do not get locked up. But because it's a government hospital, it was locked up so that the victims were denied care, medical care. The victims also expect that the Fulanis should be evacuated from their villages. The Fulanis, with brazen impunity, are in the villages. They are grazing on crops. What stares us in the face is serious humanitarian crisis. Hunger stares us in the face. You need to go there and see. Children are beginning to get malnourished because the source of livelihood of our people is gone. Next. Now, what have we done? Our effort so far is we try to place all the things that are happening within global national and global domain. But because we are speaking out now, we have come under severe stricture from the government. The focus is not on the attackers. Government is not interested in confronting the attackers. Government is interested rather in arresting, prosecuting, intimidating the victims. Now, including journalists that speak out, that write out. Mr. Luca Binyard is a journalist to the Vanguard newspaper. He was arrested, he was detained, and right now he is in court. Mr. Audu Mekoli and several other persons. I that am speaking before you as a national president of the 53 ethnic nationalities that are composed of in southern Kaduna, have come under severe threats, severe intimidation by the governor, but I've told him that I will not be cowed. But right now, he has vowed, will be arrested, will be prosecuted. So there is a need for you to know. There's, okay, no, back to that, yes. Now, we have been doing sensitization and awareness workshops. We have representation, lawyers among us represent the victims. We've been having conferences, presentation of victims' rights through the judicial process. This we have done. I think we will take over.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I will briefly give a summary of all that what has been said. So, as Fatima was saying, minority religious and ethnic religious groups experience discrimination in Nigeria. So injustice has been allowed to occur by Nigerian government and other actors. The Nigerian government has proven unwilling or unable to abate the violence that has been occurring, conducted by the Fulani militants. This has resulted in the fact that the Fulanis are, their attacks are getting more atrocious and more grave, and they have been more emboldened to continue their agenda of occupying villages and killing people and confiscating territory. So due to the lack of intervention by the Nigerian government, numerous efforts have been made. So due to this lack of intervention, it is imperative that the international community gets involved and advocates for this situation and steps in. So we have some certain recommendations. One of them is to put pressure on the Nigerian government to not only show concern from time to time, but also to apprehend perpetrators and prosecute them. Secondly, the United Nations need to conduct an independent and impartial investigation into the allegations of killings. And then most importantly, the villages that have been aggressed by Fulani militants are still being occupied by them today. Victims recognize some of these perpetrators, but they cannot do anything because the Fulani militants have arms and all these kind of things. So what the United Nations needs to come in and conduct an impartial investigation, and prosecution needs to take place. People need to be given back their villages and need to be able to rebuild whatever has been destroyed. So the Nigerian government must respect the rights of religious minorities and their rights to the land and their property. So the Nigerian Human Rights Council must condemn the sustained and unabated killings of people and condemn the occupation of villages by the Fulani herdsmen. There are villages like Agatu and Jol who are now still being occupied. The Nigerian government has to hold accountable all groups who have claimed responsibility for the attacks by statements in the news and newspapers and media. And there's also certain government officials, like governors, who have been given statements that ask for investigation on their role in these atrocities, such as the governor El Rufai. He has appeased the perpetrators and not prosecuted them, even though he has identified few of them, certain of them. So we want to thank you for your attention, and we give room for questions and answers now.
Thank you. Thank you for this introduction and interesting statements. I don't know if there are some questions from the audience on this subject. Yeah. Maybe one question. There was this problem in Mali, which is not far from Nigeria, with also terrorism and so on. The French have made an intervention there. What is your opinion? Because it's also a little bit the same problem. Even if it is a neighboring country, is it useful, this kind of military intervention? It is not useful. It is. My question is also related to what can Europe do for helping you? You know, is it a military intervention useful or not? Maybe. And what is your opinion about Malian question, which can spread all around Sahara?
Yeah, we've seen internationally there have been some military interventions. In Syria, there have been a military intervention, and like the one you said in our neighboring country, the Niger and Chad. The French government have gone in there to intervene, and we find out that those countries are calm. We have in our own country, there is a terrorist group also that existed, Boko Haram, that have been taken on militarily. And the government have fought Boko Haram and is diminishing. Okay. So we think and we know that if the government attempt a military intervention, it will be successful. What we see is that there is no attempt to intervene at all. Rather, when people are voicing what is happening to them, then they become the victims. I mean, they also are arrested and intimidated. It's as if there is a deliberate attempt to keep silent what is happening. So that's why we think that the United Nations needs to come in, and when they make necessary research and find out exactly what kind of terrorism that goes in there, then the right intervention comes in, whether it's military or whatever. But we need that right away.
Okay. I don't know if there is another, no other comment.
Okay. There's a question?
Yeah. Come to the microphone to be registered, please.
Do I put it down? Okay. I'm glad to be here, and I want to greet from the bottom of my heart all the hosts of this event. I'm a priest, and I've been serving here in Geneva for the past 7 years. I'm a Nigerian, and I happen to be also from Southern Zaire, I must say, Southern Kaduna. I'm from Baju tribe and from Madakia, if any of you knows where Madakia is. I've been following up the events and have been particularly interested in the communique that was sent out by the Kafanchan diocese. So we have tried to mobilize here, and I'm happy for once, at least, that we have this platform for it to be able, for this sad event that has been on and on, to be able, to receive some kind of special attention, and with an opportunity for it, at least to have some kind of echo in the international community. So thank you for the host, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to express ourselves. Now to my question. I've been away from home too long to be able to know the realities as yourselves, the presenters. And most of the times when people are putting questions to me, each time there's something that is circulating, about these sad happenings in Nigeria, I really don't know. I feel confused myself. I'm no longer home, but home is still my roots, and I still feel, a son of the soil. What happens there concerns me, and I feel lost. One of the questions I'm really battling with, I remember growing up. We used to have Fulani friends. Our parents welcomed them, sometimes even gave them grazing lands. And, the cohabitation was kind of peaceful. Now, why is it, at what point in our own history have we have this kind of sad turn where we are, hearing of killings every now and then between these two communities? And how come, actually, and that is my very important question, how come the Fulani men or herdsmen are, move around with arms that are sophisticated, as even sometimes more sophisticated with the one, compared to the arms, the military are supposed to be having. Please, can anyone explain?
Okay, my own one. I have to greet him in his native tongue so that he can feel at home. Actually, what you have said bothers us too, because I grew up with Fulani people in my own home. We answered the same father's name. We went to school, the same class with some of them. And as when I was getting married, they gave me a free cow because we were like brothers. But I can tell you, things changed. A certain religious ideology captured them. And you just found people that they used to follow us to church. And they would not enter the church, they would stand outside and wait for us to finish service before we go on our childhood strollings. But suddenly they became different. And we believe that the introduction of Sharia, particularly by the 12 northern states, instigated this transformation, negative transformation. Suddenly they became violent. Suddenly these same brothers of ours teamed up with people unknown to us and started attacking. They used to come and ask for the land. They never laid claim to land. They never laid claim to ownership. And they used to ask for the land. And they will be given because we have abundant land. But this time around, they were taking the land by force. And nobody dared to say no. And it was because there was a new trend. And like we said previously, that not all of them are violent, but there is a violent, aggressive militia, largely made up of the Fulani that we knew and a new set that came into town. They just gang up and go from village to village, attacking and taking over the land by force. This is what we have seen. And when you talk of the arms, truly they are sophisticatedly armed. And we have seen it. Our people in the villages have confessed that there are times helicopters used to come in the night and deliver supplies to them in the bush. And virtually all the attacks, when the helicopter departs, the attack will start. So we do think that there is a systematic conspiracy with some powerful people to execute an agenda, which is simply to drive off the owners of the land and take it over by force. We are not against Fulani grazing their cattle, no. But if you want to graze cattle on my land, you have a duty to ask me for it. If you cannot buy it and I feel disposed to, I can give it to you free. But nobody is asking now. Nobody is begging or asking to buy. People are just the Fulani are just taking the land by force because they have superior firepower and they have connections in government. Currently, the Nigerian state, all the arm-bearing forces, the security apparatus is largely controlled by the Fulani. The Inspector General of Police, the commander of the army, director of SSS, everything is in their hands. So they do most of these things with impunity and nobody is punished. You go and report, a blind eye is turned on the issue. I hope we have been able to answer a few of the...
Yes, Ms. Fatima?
Okay.
Yeah, what I want to say is in response to the first question. I'm thinking that in addition to, not even in addition, let's say before a military approach, I think it's very important that an investigation is done. Of course, I fear that when you come and the government knows you're coming to investigate that, you might have immigration problems. But if you do get into Nigeria, in fact, what we want Europe to do is to come and investigate, okay? Don't listen to us. I don't even want you to believe us. Just come on ground, talk to the victims, see the places, and conclude for yourselves. Meet people who have actually suffered these things, because sometimes when you advocate for people and they want to respond, they'll say that, okay, because you're also Christian, or because, you know, they just try to impute certain things. But when you come and do an independent investigation, and then you ask the victims themselves, what would you want us to do? I think we'll get a very effective response. And I also think that the leaders, the government, should also be held responsible. They should be pressured to do the right thing. They know what to do. This is not something that is beyond the Nigerian government if they are willing to do this. But if they are not willing to do it, there's international responsibility to protect. And I'm beginning to think that that principle, that responsibility to protect, should be taken seriously, because if the government is unwilling, not unable, but unwilling to protect the people have a right to live. This is an international right. Can
you give an indication of how many people have been killed and displaced?
Well, roughly, because the nature of these villages that are being attacked are the topography is very, you know, it's not accessible to the basic amenities. There's no light, there's no internet. So you can't really get there. A lot of these deaths that go unaccounted, undocumented. But in one community like Agatu, you can find over 20,000 people. It's that bad.
Yeah.
Somebody's. Yeah, please.
I think one of you said that one of the governor of Kaduna State has been once quoted as having said that some of the perpetrators of these crimes are people coming from outside of Nigeria. Is that true? Yes. Now, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, but can't we infer from that another problem? That would mean that Nigeria is incapable actually of securing its borders. So I think there's also a problem there. Now, are we not also, is it not interesting to make a recommendation here? If Nigeria, which is a big nation actually within the South African sub-region, is incapable of, taking care of its borders and then, knowing who is coming and who is going out, I think that is a responsibility actually also that Nigeria has to, we have to make Nigeria take that responsibility. Being a nation, an independent nation, means knowing who goes in and who goes out. That's the reason we have identity cards, and that's the reason we have passports. So.
Yeah, appropriately said. I was pointing that out as one of the contradictions that come from government. Because as a lawyer, there's no provision in our law that allows you to pay money to an identified criminal. There is no law, either internationally or locally, that says you have identified people who are killing your citizens, and instead of bringing them to justice to face the law, you go and give them money. So and tell the world that yes, you have done it so that they stop killing. It's unheard of, it's practically unworkable, and that is why it has not worked. In fact, the victims say that the governor actually, since he has said that he is also Fulani, he has actually confessed to going to give the attackers money to buy more arms to come and execute the agenda. And it's not far from being the truth. So our cry and our concern today is that, yes, Boko Haram is being fought to a standstill, but there is a new terrorist group that is going on, that is escalating, that is doing more damage, and it is not being confronted by authority. When Boko Haram started, authority confronted it, except that there was failure here and there. But government was against it. Today, the actions of the Fulani herdsmen is going on untouched. Government has refused to confront it, talk less of asking for help from the international community to fight this terrorist group. And as my brother said earlier, this terrorist group has been identified by several international organizations as a very fierce, upcoming, dangerous terrorist group. If within a space of 2 years, between 2014 and 2015, they are known and documented to have killed up to 4,000 people. This is not from us now. This is from the international organizations who have conducted research and verified their figures. So when a group like that is allowed without confrontation, only God knows what will become in the next few months.
What has been the response of the Nigerian president?
It's very interesting. From April/May last year, when these killings, I won't say began, but heightened and intensified, we began to cry out to governments, both at the state and the national level, federal level, asking them to send security personnel on ground. Now, I gave you an example of Birnungwari Forest, where the governor synergized with other governors, about 4 governors, and they decisively took an action that brought cattle rustling menace to an end. Now, there was also cattle rustling in Zamfara State, a different state from Kaduna State. His Excellency, the President of Nigeria, wore military uniform, went to Zamfara State and flagged up an operation. Now, remember, the President of Nigeria is also Fulani, just like the governor of Kaduna State is Fulani. When there, he saw that, he took that as very important, that cattle were being stolen. And he went and flagged up a decisive operation, bringing to an end cattle rustling menace in Birnungwali. Now, when we began, we asked them to come and replicate the same success story in Southern Kaduna. They refused. Now, this continued, the killings continued. Now, I give you a particularly sad incident. Sometimes in August, in August specifically, there's a village called in October, precisely 27th of October, 2016, there's a village called Misisi Village, close to Goska community that almost everybody now knows. On that day, people wearing military uniform. Now, the military is controlled by the federal government, not by the state government, which means the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Nigeria. People wearing military uniform went to Misisi Village, demanded to have a meeting with the village head, a man that was 85 years old. And this man, John Zogo, 85 years old, called another person, 80 years, other people like that, up to about 7 people altogether. And they went to have the meeting with the military people, controlled, by the presidency. The next thing the villagers had were shots, gunshots. All the 7 of them were shot dead. The military in Nigeria, they use Hilux vehicle. Those are the vehicles they use. Those same people wearing military uniform, they entered their vehicle and they left. Now, the national president of Kaninkong Development Association addressed this one. He issued a press statement. It's here. And I also mentioned that on some of our national television stations. Now, we thought if the information is incorrect, that they'll point out that the information is incorrect, but nothing has been done. Now, we kept crying like that. Then, from April up to December, nothing was said or done by the president. Nothing was said or done by the president up to December, until Goska incident. And after Goska incident, it was the first time. Before that time, the presidency was asked, Why is it that the presidency has been quiet, has said nothing about all the killings? The presidential spokesman, Femi Adesina, came out to say that it is not everything the president talks about. Hundreds of lives gone, and the presidency said it's not everything. Now, but let me tell you, 1 week after that statement by the presidential spokesman, a mosque in University of Maiduguri was bombed. And immediately the presidency issued a statement. Now, one mosque was bombed by Boko Haram 1 week after, but hundreds of lives lost the same year in southern Kaduna. Those lives were not deemed worthy of comments by the presidency. Now, we also kept saying, like the issue of the helicopter, we kept saying there is a strange helicopter that drops supplies, and in Nigeria, it is the federal government that controls the airspace, the NAMA, Nigeria Air Management Agency, the Air Force, and then in Nigeria, we claim to have, the federal government has claimed to have what is called total radar coverage, TRACON. So any aircraft that flies within the national airspace, they should be able to pick. Nothing was done. And there are so many things that we came to the conclusion that it appears that both the federal and the state government are complicit in what was happening or what has been happening in southern Kaduna.
Yeah, I want to add something. Yeah, just one quick comment. I think we need to also mention that this is not exclusive to southern Kaduna alone. This is happening in Benue, in Plateau State. In fact, there's a community show in Plateau State. It's called Show. You cannot access that community without an armored tank escorting you in there. It's so bad, and it keeps growing from one place to the other. This thing is a continuous thing. It's sustained. As early as last week, we still have those things ongoing. So it's a current problem, and it needs to be addressed urgently. Thank you.
Okay? Yes. Fine. About both borders, the border with Nigeria and the border with Cameroon, if I remember well, for centuries, almost at least 2 centuries, people would cross the border with Niger. Even now, the customs officers lift the barrier once a week, and the market is on both sides. I remember the Fulani would go with their cattle to Niger if the situation was better in Niger, or they would come down and with their friends, or sometimes very, very close friends, houses, they would make the business in Kano. Is it a dream? Is it possible to go back to that situation, or that border now can be crossed by many people who are neither Fulani, neither Hausas. They can be crossed by people with weapons coming from Libya, or weapons coming from Libya through Cameroon.
Right. What we've said is that the responsibility of every government is to create safety for its people. Nigerian state has been known to be effective in that direction. Like you recall clearly that people who come even from northern Nigeria were allowed at some point because they know the routes, they know when they would come in. What bothers us is that that is no longer obtainable. Is it purposely neglected, or is there an orchestrated plan that look the other way and allow such crime to come in freely because they have a target, more so that the targeted people are minority people, and whenever it happens to a certain religious groups, then the presidency stands up. What I will tell you is that it is almost becoming like if you hit a cow in Nigeria, then the president will speak. But if people die, then nothing is said. So to us, there is a deliberate negligence that has been coming from the government. There have not been any effort at all to protect some of these communities. Sometimes you will see after such an attack, they pump in military men and police to come into communities, and when people rely on them and think that they've come to defend them, our organizations have recorded instances where when people depended on such defense or security men, they fail them. They give them up to more killings. There are situations whereby you will find military men and a military post there, but attack is going on, someone is being shot, and the military just sit down, do nothing about it. No arrest and nothing. So it is like the instruments of security is pushed to the area that is targeted simply to disarm the people and rob them of self-defense of any kind. And then, on the other hand, their situation is denied and they become helpless. So it's a gradual, execution and termination of a people group.
Thanks. Oh, yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to add. I think I get your drift, sir, about the borders being lifted, the porousness of our borders. It's real. But what bothers us today is that when the Nigerian state is interested in stopping anything, it can do it. Our concern is that in this case, the Nigerian government is not interested. We have seen it repeated over and over. And when you look at Cameroon, I have the map here with me. Cameroon is down there, so far away from southern Kaduna. Before you come to southern Kaduna from Cameroon, you passed over 7 states. So for anybody to say that the attackers come from Cameroon, that person is just trying to talk. He's not being serious. And there is nobody that can walk through from Cameroon, pass through these states with arms, and the security forces of Nigeria will not stop him if they want to. The Fulanis, why? Yes, thank you. Why they can do it now, as we have stated, all the arm-bearing security agencies are being handled by Fulanis. And you can write all your reports, like my sister said earlier. In the case of Habiba, who has been abducted and got married to an emir, to one young man, he took her, and they conducted the marriage against the wish of the parents. Reports, people have written, people have gone to the police, people have gone everywhere. Nothing. As if you are hitting a stone. Nothing has come out of it. The girl is still there. So the Fulanis have a free reign, and it appears they are just being supported to do whatever they want to do. Otherwise, there is no reason why you have a battalion of soldiers just 5 kilometers away from a village that is being attacked. The soldiers have vehicles. They have guns, but they will not go to the site of the attack. They will only go there 8 hours or 10 hours after the attackers have gone to pack the corpses for burial. This we have seen over and over again. And that is why we're worried.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know, please you quote me wrong, But I know that in Southern Zaire, especially around Kafanchano, let's just say the whole of Southern Zaire, it is hard actually to imagine 10 families where you don't find a military. It is the area, I mean, up north, where in the past you had most families actually where at least a member of the family had served as a military. I hope I'm not wrong. Good. Now, how is it? I want to see how politicization comes into this affair, because could that not be one of the reasons why the Fulanis are properly armed these days, actually, so that they are able to actually come into this area and maybe fight? Because if it were just ordinary fighting, I don't think they can be able to face the indigents. That's what I'm sure. So, but whose interest and who is behind this arming them with sophisticated weapons is another question, which remains actually unanswered.
Okay, yeah, let me start by, okay, one is actually not, because we've been asked to talk about dialogue, we've been asked to talk about the fighting going on, and we said, no, there's nothing like that. You are sleeping in your house, in your village, and then people come in the night, they take you by surprise. You don't even, it's not as if there's one side or there's fighting going on by two disputants. Nothing like that. That's number one. Number two, you need to know, because you've been here for a little while, that actually the situation, things have changed in Nigeria. Like you said, the security architecture and all the people, virtually all the people in control of anything that has to do with security now, they are Hausa or Fulani, and Muslims too. Now, you will find that recruitment now into any of the armed forces is largely done by those at the top echelons. The chief of army staff may have a long list of people. And so most of the people, that generation where you knew the Southern Kaduna people, the Middle Belt people, the Plateau people having a lot of generals, that era has more or less gone. Let me tell you, it's not just also in the military. In almost everything. Now, your children, no matter how brilliant they are, they can't get admission to courses of their choices. They can't get admission in the first place. But if they get admission now, in almost all the universities, at least in the north, they won't get admission to read courses of their choices. Neither will you if you come back, sir. If you are not as a priest, if you come back with your degree and whatever, you want to get job now, you are not likely going to get any job. So virtually everything has been taken over. Now, if it is a situation where our people is a war, where we'll face each other, then that's a different thing. But in any case, that is not even possible, because you know that the military, they don't retire. So that's the scenario.
Okay.
If there is another question, so if it is not the case, I would like to thank for your questions. Thanks to thank the audience, but maybe I will give to Mrs. Boss the final word for this press meeting, and thanks again to all of you with your answers and speeches. Yes, please, Mrs. Boss.
We just want to thank you for your attention, and we hope that action will be taken based on the information that we have provided. And this press conference can be reviewed on the Geneva Press Club website. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.